first edition of sort of these weekly rundowns of my observations here at business school and applying it to outside learning. And my very first thing I want to talk about is the power of networking, because one of the catchphrases of business school is it's not about the classroom, it's about drinks and networking. And there's so much into it, and so much soft skills that go into it, that when there's certain things that happen and occur that are sort of flagrant violations of sort of the general rules of principle, I just want to call that out. And so I was at a biotech networking event on Saturday night, and we were at the top of this beautiful penthouse apartment of this partner of a law firm, getting together with all NYU, Columbia Business School, NYU Medical School, our medical school. So sort of the general scene of people interested in biotech space here in New York. And I was just going around making my rounds, trying to build rapport, build connections, and give a nice close with next step follow-ups and exchange of business cards, et cetera, et cetera. And there was this one person who actually really took me back. I went up to her towards the end of the evening and asked her who she was, and she's like, "Oh, I'm no one important. I'm just a nurse in school in Canada. So you don't want to talk to me. You probably want to talk to my boyfriend." And her boyfriend was, a fellow at one of these NYU hospitals. And so I guess by comparison, he may have been a big shot. But, I took that moment and just sort of paused and said, it's not necessarily your job to, short sell yourself. It's my job to find the best out of you. And from that conversation, I found out she was from Canada. I found out that, she had made her own observations of the biotech space and how a lot of American-based innovations don't really work in Canada because of the way that it's run. It's sort of run through the government, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, that was fascinating. I mean, here at this event that was surrounded by people from New York, from America, who have this perception, there was this woman who had this completely different experience and perspective on things. And the fact that she discounted that really got me thinking about this program I read, and this ebook I read called Empower Your Language. And some of the 10 key takeaways from that I've always held is that thoughts create your actions, which create your destiny. So therefore your thoughts become your destiny, and you can massage and help shape your thoughts, which help shape your destiny. And from that, actually, a fun little a trivia thing is that abracadabra, the name abracadabra, actually means with my words, I create thoughts. And so I thought that was always cool. Abracadabra is like a spell. And, when you cast a spell, you're actually using your language to sort of create this mental imagery. And so the whole purpose of Empower Your Language is to differentiate the two different mindsets, or this victim mentality and this empowerment mentality. And it's really to hone in on your self-talk and what it is that you tell yourself internally. And, you could say you're your harshest critic. And a lot of people say, I'm no good, or I could do better. I'm not good at that. I'm late. I'm a late person, or I'm a bad singer. And what happens is that talk that programs your brain to think that is who you are, and that's how you should act, and that actually becomes your destiny. And so the whole point of this program and this book is to tap into your own self-talk and switch it from a victim mentality to an empowerment mentality. Because just as you can use those spells, so to speak, to cast negative things and create a negative destiny, you can actually create a positive destiny with an empowerment mentality. And so one of the areas you see sort of this negative mentality is a lot through gossip and through blaming. Like, oh, she didn't turn this in on time, or, oh, did you hear what John did to Susie? That kind of conversation and talk perpetuates in your mind, and it's what you talk about, and that's what you focus on. And so being aware of when that gossip comes in your own mind, like, oh my God, that was such a stupid comment she said. You may not necessarily say that out loud to someone, or you may, but the fact that you think it actually programs you to act in a certain way. And so to just be consciously aware of these thoughts and these thought patterns and words you use, whether in a social setting or sort of your internal dialogue. And then the second part of this was this use of soft language. And you know, I've sort of used it with you sometimes, and use it for myself to help break these limiting beliefs. You know, and what soft language is sort of words to create a nebulous situation to avoid confrontation. And it sort of removes yourself from the power, such as, you know, I don't feel like I can do this right now. What does that mean? You know, I don't feel that I can do it. So what it is you're removing yourself, which is I don't feel that I can. And so it gets fairly technical from here on out, but the point is that to simplify and hone in on your own belief system and your own subconscious thought patterns, to really identify and see what it truly is that you think. And one of the ways to do that is to fix this soft language. And I'll put in the show notes what some of these examples of soft language is. But it's really a form of reduction of the words and phrases you say to essentially be, I think this, or I am scared, as opposed to, I think that I'm not sure I can do this right now. Those have two very different connotations. I am scared is an empowerment mentality, because you identify yourself and you identify the feeling that you have in the situation. Whereas if you say, I don't feel that I can do this right now, what you've done is you've distanced yourself, and you've sort of taken this victim mentality, this victim mindset away from it. Because if you say, I am scared, that identifies that you are in control, you are in power, and you've identified the emotion, the underlying emotion in this situation. When if you say, I don't feel I could do this right now, what you've done is you've sort of given up the control, because you have this nebulous feeling. It could be one of a million different things. And so by understanding your thought pattern and reducing it down to the simplest form, and removing the soft language and changing the victim mentality to an empowerment mentality, you actually can help change how you think, how you act, and your destiny. And so tying it back to this networking event, at the end of our conversation and interaction, I actually had a brief discussion with her about how, you know, she should be, very proud of the fact that she's a Canadian here in New York, that she has her own perspective, and that she is valuable. And we just witnessed it in our conversation that, oh my gosh, you're the only person here who has this perspective. And it was really fun to see her sort of light up and go, you know what, you're right. And so for the rest of the networking event, I could sort of see her sort of beaming and being sort of, more powerful in the moment, which was great. So I was wondering, have you had any thoughts on this? Have you read anything about this? I know you're at Hyper Island, or just about finishing up, and did they talk about this? Has this happened in your life?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting with the last point that you tapped on. I think is one of the biggest things that we were taught at Hyper, is to use less of the soft language. They didn't communicate it in so many words, but we learned to take ownership of our feelings in any given moment, because in effect, our brains become ultra stressed. And when we're dealing with these feelings and we do not communicate them directly, we're not able to have that sort of cathartic release of, okay, I've owned my feeling and I've made it apparent to whoever it matters to, then I'm actually just going to be fixated and thinking about how I'm feeling all day. I'm constantly trying to avoid confrontation, this and that and the other. I had an interesting experience working with a group back in November, and I was actually having a lot of conflict with one of my teammates. She is incredibly aggressive personality, definitely a go-getter, and I was the leader for this project, and she was also very much of a leader personality, and a lot of times, probably completely unconsciously, not aware that she was creating sort of what I felt like were subversive actions, like undermining my leadership. Things like not sharing her feelings about how things were going, not voicing her opinion or perspectives, but withholding it so that I would fail and learn. And so that was, not an ideal working relationship, but because of being a part of Hyper Island, I was able to bring it up with her and say, like, I feel I feel threatened by you.
Wow.
I feel insecure around you because of the choices that you put on this. You do have more experience in this area, which I feel a bit insecure around you with that, but I'm feeling threatened by you. And so that allowed us to actually have a dialogue, and it released a lot of the tension. We throughout the entire time, I can't say that it made everything better. However, what it did was it allowed us to have and build a relationship and a dialogue. And we're really good friends now, actually, as a result. Whereas I think that could have, if both of us, without the advantage of being able to own up to our feelings and communicate with one another, we would have probably become enemies in not too many words. Just because we had such conflicting attitudes and worldviews, and ultimately we have very, very different backgrounds. Me coming from a small religious family, and her coming from a very, very liberal Swedish family that is, a lot of different things going on there. A lot of conflicts naturally baked into us, but now we're doing very well.
That's awesome. So it works not only personally in the voice inside your head, but also interpersonally.
Interpersonally, I would say that it's phenomenal. A more recent story, I would say a couple days ago, I started listening to this guy, Zig Ziglar, who is an old sales professional from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. He made his fortune and became best known for his motivational speeches. But he talks about the power of self-talk and the belief that we have when we are selling. For example, if you're going to be a salesperson, his confidence in the person, the who I am, matters more than what I do or what I say. So the best way for me to affect myself is to change the way that I think about myself. So since listening to this guy, Zig Ziglar, I've woken up in the mornings, and because I want to be naturally a better person, I actually want to be a disciplined, determined, consistent, empathetic, high intelligence, high emotion person. I have this whole list of affirmations that I have written for myself. Speaking those in the morning and choosing to believe them sincerely, not because it's going to make me some kind of, renowned person, but because it's going to actually identify myself as this really capable human being, actually has given me more energy. I feel more enthusiastic about life. And the other interesting thing is I start becoming much more aware of a lot of the missteps and times when I do not live up to the things that I'm claiming in the morning. And it's like I'm rewiring the schema in my brain. It's like, oh, but I claimed that I was going to be consistent, and I meant it when I said it, and here I'm faltering. Okay, well, one of these things is going to have to change, but I've committed to being consistent, so I guess I'm going to have to change this behavior pattern. And it makes it so much easier than trying to work through a lot of these, tricks and, habit hacks and things like that. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's been a pretty big impact. Huh?
So because you said it to yourself, right, in these affirmations, you have to act it now to be congruent.
Exactly. But I think there's a key point to this, which is actually believing it. And for me, you know about this about me. 4, 5, 6 years ago, I was attempting the same things, but the reason that I was doing it was because I felt like I should do it, as opposed to actually wanting it. And I think that there's a really core principle at the base of empowering language. I think it's a great place to start. You also have to want to empower yourself. You can't do it out of like a reluctant, almost, well, I should empower myself, so therefore I'm going to start. But if that's the best you can get, you might as well start there. But it's much more powerful to actually have a desire powering the want to use empowering language.
That's awesome. We'll definitely have to touch on that at a later date. So your transition and journey from feeling like you should to actually wanting to. So thank you so much for joining with me and sharing sort of our perspectives and opinions and things we've read and heard about and how we're applying it to our life in both business school and in team settings, both here in New York City at Columbia and where you are in Sweden. So thank you guys for listening. And if you want more details about this this program, the full rundown, full review of it will be just down here. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye.